到星星 Career， 我係主持人 Suri。咁今日咧，我哋好榮幸咧可以請到 Dr. George Cautherley 嚟我哋嘅節目度啦，去問一啲關於創業性嘅問題。咁 Dr. George 咧係一個最早返到內地一個發展一個保健產品嘅一個好勁嘅一個商人嚟嘅。咁其實咧喺1964年咧，佢喺內地嗰陣時咧已經推廣緊一個醫療嘅設備啦，同埋一啲從事保健嘅一啲產品嘅生意嘅。而喺1970年咧，更加開設咗廠房去生產屬於佢自己嘅一啲醫療設備啦，同埋推廣一啲保健嘅產品知識嘅。而 Dr. George 咧喺近10幾年嚟咧，亦都好盡力咁樣去研發一啲關於 biotech 嘅一啲技術嘅，係啦。咁我哋今日咧就好榮幸可以請到佢啦，咁就可以 share 啲關於佢創業嘅一啲心聲嘅，係啦。Welcome Dr. George.
Thank you.
Yeah. Would you like to share about your entrepreneurial experience for us?
Okay, fine. Yes, I mean, I came out to Hong Kong in 1964 to work for my uncle, who was an entrepreneur. So I was an assistant entrepreneur at that time. And then after 16 years, I helped a UK company set up a company in Hong Kong. But it was really until 1993, when I bought their shareholding out, that I became a real entrepreneur. And then after that, I started to invest bit by bit in other businesses. So it took me a long time to become a full entrepreneur. It is a slow process sometimes.
So, do you guess when you become a real entrepreneur, what do you gain or lose in this time?
Well, I think the main thing is all the decisions are yours. If you succeed, it's your success. If you fail, it's your failure. So you take full responsibility. And I mean, I think when I look back on my whole career, yeah, temperamentally, I'm not suited to be working in a corporation. A small organization suits me much better. And it was getting responsibility very early on. I mean, almost as soon as I joined, I was given things to do that I'd never been given to do before. And that motivates you a great deal, I think. I think that's so big. I think you become an entrepreneur because you're motivated to do something, to try and achieve something. And then you have all the freedom of being able to do it on your own without other people interfering.
Okay, so do you, the most hardest time in your business, do you remember that?
I think the hardest time, that's difficult. I don't think there have ever really been unsurmountable hard times. I think starting up the company in 1979 for the UK partner, that was quite difficult. But I had their financial support. When I bought the company, finally, in 1993, it was doing very well. So although I had to repay the purchase price out of my earnings, the earnings were well sufficient to cover that. So yeah, I don't think there were really big problem times for me. I was very lucky.
Oh, so why did you choose medical for your business?
It was chosen for me. My uncle invited me. I was in the UK. I was living there. My uncle invited me to come out to Hong Kong and work for him, and he had a general trading company, did all sorts of things, and he had fairly recently set up a medical products sector. And he suggested that perhaps it was a good idea for me to go and work there and develop that for his business. So that's how I got involved in it. But I have no scientific background, no technical background, but I found it very, very interesting. And technology is a sector that is continually changing. So there are always new things, new ideas coming up. So it's always fresh. So I found, very motivating.
So how do you think the insight on the medical business and the health technology in 10 years?
In the next 10 years?
Yeah, next 10 years.
Well, I think what I like about the medical products business is that it's a very stable business. It's not necessarily so spectacular unless you're in biotechnology, which I do have investments there. But no matter whether the economy is good or the economy is bad, people still get sick. So they have to take advantage of medical facilities. And what happens when the economy is bad is that people go to the government because they can't afford to do it on their own. When the economy is good and they've got a bit more money, they go to the private sector. So what you see in the business is sometimes your government business does better and other times your private business does better. So I think there's a very stable future for it. And for most of my career, including up to now, I've been in the distribution side, in other words, selling other people's products. But my personal investments in biotechnology are in startup companies. And that's very exciting, but also quite risky. And many don't succeed. I mean, I figured that if in the end 20% of the companies I invest in are successful, I will be not doing too badly, and I'll probably cover any losses for the ones that aren't successful.
Oh, so how do you think about the influence of the technology and the social media to your business?
Well, technology is constantly influencing what you do in your business, and even in my distribution business, I mean, we always have to be aware of new technologies and try and find companies that have new technologies because that's what your customer wants. So you're always moving forward along the technology curve, and that's what makes it extremely interesting, I think.
Okay, so how do you think about innovation and how Hong Kong can develop the innovation better? Well,
I have very strong ideas on innovation in Hong Kong. I mean, I think innovation is an area in which Hong Kong must move into, but at the innovation point, not at the manufacturing point, because we are no longer a suitable environment for doing manufacturing because of our high cost of land, high cost of staff, and then next door you've got Shenzhen, which can do manufacturing much cheaper than us, and I have a factory in Shenzhen, so I'm well aware of the cost there, and I have a factory in Hainan, so I know the challenges from China. But developing technologies, I think Hong Kong certainly has good opportunities, and I think it's an area that the government needs to approach in a more focused way than it has so far. And I think what it needs to do is private business, certainly in the Hong Kong environment, doesn't do much innovation and probably never will, because it can be quite expensive. So I think what the government needs to do is invest much more money in the universities so they can undertake more research. And then what the universities need to do is have a better way of having their research commercialized, because at the moment the technology transfer departments of universities are not really very fit for purpose. They're staffed by academics and administrators who don't know what the commercial world is like and what may be commercial and what may not be commercial. So I think that's an area where perhaps the government can use the science park to set up technology transfer for all the Hong Kong universities. And they would then have to offer their IP on a first refusal basis to the science park. And then the science park could afford to employ experts in technology transfer with good track records in commercialization. And I think that way we could be much more successful. But it's a long process. I mean, to develop a pharmaceutical, I'm a director of a publicly listed pharmaceutical company, which started off in 2003. Our first project will come to market in 2022. So almost 20 years between startup and getting a product on the market. So in the technology field, the biotechnology field, the timelines are quite long. For medical devices, it's much less, maybe 3 to 5 years, but pharmaceuticals is very long. And these are things that the government needs to understand when it's setting out its ideas for supporting innovation and technology in Hong Kong.
Oh, okay. Besides the government, in nowadays, because you need to start up a new business in Hong Kong, it's really high cost. So what do you think about nowadays? There are many business start up just for 1 to 2 years and then close. How do you think about what is the problem?
Probably the problem in most cases is they simply have the wrong product for the market. Or the other problem is that they start up underfinanced. Now, if you're going into the IT business, software business, that is much easier because all you need is a computer and a connection to the internet, and you can develop your software products. And then you've got something that you can take to potential investors. But if you're going into equipment, into pharmaceuticals, into diagnostics, you need a lot of capital. And that is not so easy. But then if you get the development done in the universities, so if you use the universities as your starting point, you get much of the work done there, and you get to a stage where you have something that professional investors and venture capital people can understand and then are prepared to invest in. And I think that's probably the way. I've been involved in more than one investment from a university, and basically they did all the R&D work, and then they got to a point where the product was suitable for commercialization, and then it was much easier to get funding because you'd reached a stage where people could understand that there was something that they could make money out of and get a return for their investment.
So how to decide the right time to start with a new business, or what do you think about it? Is it suitable for start a new business right here, right in Hong Kong right now?
Any time is suitable as long as you've got the right idea. Now, if you have a business that is going to take a lot of development, then it doesn't matter when you start it. If you've got a business you want to take to the market very quickly, then you may take into account what the current economic situation is. And if the economic situation is like it is now, you may not want to take a product to the market because the market is not very active. But if you've got 2 or 3 years of development to do, then fine, you can start today. It's very easy.
Okay. Last but not least, may Dr. George to share something or just say something to encourage the startup right now in Hong Kong?
Well, I think if you've got a good idea, then you can start thinking about how you can practically bring it to fruition, and try and do as much work as you can while you've got a job. So the early stages of anything you do, try and work out while you've got support from your normal day job. Then when you've got to a stage where you think you've got something that you can raise money on, and most people, when they start up, they get friends, and occasionally, I'm not sure how it works in Hong Kong, but elsewhere, certainly crowdfunding now, if you've got a really good idea, can be effective. But you need to get your idea to a certain point where people can see the potential for it, and then you'll get your funding. And I think actually in Hong Kong there is quite a lot of funding available, but the problem is people don't know where to go for it. And I think this is something that the government needs to help with, and maybe using Invest Hong Kong or some organization like that. If the government can put up a database of organizations and even angel investors that are prepared to invest. And if the government can run more what do you call it? More campaigns, investor events where investors can come and meet potential entrepreneurs. That would be very helpful. I know they do some. There are 3 or 4 a year. But I think there's the potential for doing much more in this area. So giving out information so that a new entrepreneur or a would-be entrepreneur can see where help can be made available. I think that's very, very, very valuable.
Okay, thank you, Dr. George, sharing. We are really glad to meet you. 咁所以咧，今日我哋節目咧就去到呢度啦。咁好多謝咧 Dr. George 咧為我哋 share 佢嘅創業嘅一啲知識啦，同埋一啲少少嘅資訊。咁希望咧大家咧都可以喺香港咧創業成功。咁我哋下次再見啦。